So let's go ahead and get started because we have a ton of ground to cover today. So first off, here we have an outline of what we're going to be covering. So we're going to talk about pages, including what types of pages are available and the differences between them. We're going to talk about how to create and customize those pages, creating targeting and delivering your petitions to them, um, viewing page performance. Then we'll move on to creating and customizing your mailings, how to customize and personalize those mailings to individual recipients, then targeting your mailings, and also viewing their overall performance. So one thing I want to emphasize today is that, what we're covering here is general guidance. And as a former ActionKit client myself, forgot to introduce myself. My name is Shannon Turner. And I was once an ActionKit client. Now I'm a software developer. And so one of the things I love about ActionKit is how customizable it is. Every client uses ActionKit just a little bit differently, and that's wonderful because it means our clients are always innovating. But it's important to keep in mind that the workflow that you use at your organization might differ slightly from what you see here today, and that's okay. So next up, toward the end, we're going to be briefly talking about users and how to search for them and how to browse user data like action, mailing, and donation history. Then we'll cover reports very briefly. Now, reports really deserve their own 90-minute training. There's really so much ground to cover that we can't do the topic justice today in just a small ActionKit 101. But I think it's worth doing a lightning review of the highlights, and I'll provide a lot of resources at the end so you can learn on your own as well. So let's jump right into it with pages. On screen here is the Pages tab, where on the left you can browse recently created pages. You'll see details like the title, you'll see the notes, you'll see any tags that are associated with the page. You'll see what type of page it is and how many users have taken action. You can edit the page or view it or even make a copy of the page. And on the right-hand side here is a navigation menu. And here I've expanded the Add Page menu to reveal many of the different page types we can create. Now, this screenshot doesn't show all of the available page types, and that's on purpose because I wanted the screenshot to actually be readable. But you can see that I have lots of different page types available to me. And if I clicked on petition or letter or call, then you'd be able to create a page of that type. Another way you can create a page would be to copy an existing page that's similar to the one that you want to create. And I've highlighted the copy button in red here. You can often save time when you're creating a new page by copying a similar one and just changing the details that are different. But if you find yourself copying from old pages frequently, I'd recommend setting up a page model. And many of your staff colleagues have probably already created some models already that you can use. Now, a page model is a special type of page that you can customize. So think of it as a template that you can copy and work off of. I'm not going to go into how to create a page model today, but if your team has already set up a page model, and chances are they have, you'll probably want to use them, and you can find them here. Next up, this training is really just a 101, so I can't cover every type of page that you might use today. So I'll just be able to focus on the most commonly used types of pages. Sign-up pages are most commonly used on the front page of your website. They're quick and easy to get new members, and they're not necessarily associated with a specific issue or campaign. These are often the ones that get embedded on your homepage as a way to quickly sign up people who visit your website. Petition pages, on the other hand, are the most commonly used type of page in ActionKit, and they're used for general actions. So things like sign this to say, we need a Green New Deal. Now, you have the option to deliver these signatures to Congress, or you could print them off and deliver them to other kinds of targets, like the CEO of a corporation. Letter pages are similar to petitions, but they require a comment from the users. Petitions can have comments, but they're optional by default. Call pages allow you to define a set of targets and send your members to call them. So, for example, calling Congress to tell them to keep Obamacare. You set up the targeting, so for instance, the House or the Senate, and people get the option to call their specific congressperson or senators. Letter to the editor pages allow you to get members to submit letters to the editors of their local and national papers. Whip count pages are used both for calling to persuade, but also to figure out where different targets stand on your particular issue, so who still needs to be persuaded. When we're creating a page, there are some things that are common to every type of page. So let's start with the Action Basics screen. The first thing that we'll do is give our page a title. Once we do, the short name, which will make up the URL that visitors access the page from, this is going to be auto-generated, but you can customize it if you like. Next up are the notes, which are used for you and your staff to describe, what is this page all about? Why did we make it? What's it for? And then there's the tags, which are a way of categorizing your page. Two more things that are common to every type of page are the multilingual options and the custom page fields. I won't be demonstrating the multilingual options right now because we don't have time since it's just a one-on-one, but here's how they work. If you're running a campaign in multiple languages, you'll create multiple pages, you'll translate content to the languages you're using, and then you'll tie them all together here by listing them under the same multilingual campaign. I also won't have time to cover advanced options today because it's a one-on-one, but if you're looking for them, that's where you'll find them. Next, let's move on to custom page fields. These are special fields that you can customize on a per page basis that can modify the look and feel of your page. You have full control over what your custom page fields do, and you can create your own and embed them in the layout of your pages. How to do that and all of the amazing things that you can do with custom page fields, it's really worthy of its own training. So let me be brief and show you two custom page fields that I have set up here, but I also want to mention that on our blog are lots of examples of custom page fields that you can create with lots of practical uses. So first up, this first field, custom CSS. This allows me to add custom CSS code to my pages. So this is going to change the way the background color of the submit button looks. This second field, featured image, allows me to embed an image on the page. And I can also upload new images by clicking here on this blue plus sign. Some options really only make sense for specific types of pages. So for instance, a letter to the editor page is going to have different options than a call page or a petition page. Here are the options for a letter to the editor page, where you can choose which types of newspapers get included. Should we allow the user to just submit letters to the editor for their local and regional papers, or should we include phone numbers for the newspaper as well? You have choices. Here are the options for a call page, and one thing that jumps out right away is you need to choose the targets. Who are you trying to get your members to call? Are these legislative targets like their representative or senators? Is it their state rep or state senators? All of those are built into ActionKit. US Senate, US House, State Senate. We collect that information for you so you don't have to. And then you can just use these built-in target groups to target your pages. Now, you could also create a custom target group. For instance, if you wanted to be able to call the corporate headquarters of a set of companies. But depending on how you've set up your targeting, one of your members might not have anyone to call. So for instance, if you have a target group set to call all House Democrats, what will happen if your members have a Republican representative? Will you give them something to do? Or will they see, sorry, this action is not available in your area? And all of that comes down to targeting. So if you only target to House Democrats and someone who doesn't live in a district who has a Democrat, then they won't be able to take action on that page. And that's fine. Now, you can also include local offices, if you like, for in-district calls. And the fallback page URL is what you'd use for if someone doesn't have, it isn't able to take action. For instance, if the targeting is set for House Democrats and their representative is a Republican. Now, here are the options for a petition page. If you're planning to deliver these signatures, you can set your targets here, like this is a petition to House members or senators, or maybe even a corporate targets. You can also assign a goal here, and a thermometer will appear on your page showing the progress. And you might have noticed that a goal is available for all of the page types if we go back. Now on the second screen, that was just the Action Basics screen. We looked at the Action Basics for a couple of different page types, but now we are on the Edit Content screen. And so this is where you get to edit the content that appears on the page. First, under Appearance, you can customize the template set, which is your customized layout, look, and feel of your pages. Every client has customized their own template set to reflect their own branding as well as their own style and design choices. Some clients have multiple template sets that they use for different purposes, and you'd select the correct one for the particular page that you're using here. Next, under petition text, you'd get to set the statement lead-in and the statement text. Essentially, when someone opens this petition page, what's going to convince them to sign the petition? And here I've written a short blurb about how there is no planet B and we need to act now on climate change. Scrolling down a bit, I get to the thank you text, which is what will appear on the thank you page. So here I wrote, thanks for signing our petition. Can you share this with your friends now? Scrolling all the way down, now I get to select which questions I'm going to ask visitors and in which order. Email is always required, but we can customize everything else. On this page, I've chosen to require full name, email, and zip code. Asking for more information can be really nice to have, but since a longer form to fill out can also lead to lower action rates, in this example, that's all I'm asking for. On the next page, the After Action Info page, I get to choose what happens after someone has completed an action. By default, ActionKit will create a thank you page and send users to it after they sign the petition, and that's what this thank you text is for. But many clients like to send their signers to a donation page afterward to try to turn petition signers into donors. And you can do that here by changing the redirect URL to a donation page of your choice, whether that's located in ActionKit or another service like ActBlue. Also shown in this screenshot is a confirmation email section that thanks the user for signing the petition. You can customize everything about this mailing, from the layout and the styling, the subject line, the email body. And if you look closely, you'll also see that I've added some personalization in here, and I'll show you how to do that in a few slides. As a side note, if you have a donation page set up, make sure you're sending a confirmation email. That way your donors will get a donation receipt, including the details of their donation. If we scroll down a bit more, there we go. You also have full control over how your pages get shared on Facebook and Twitter. By default, ActionKit will put in your page content to make it easy on you to share the page, but you can also customize the description and the sharing image and the tweet for every page. Since petitions are the most commonly used type of page, it's worth talking about petition delivery. And this fourth page section focuses on delivering those petition signatures that you've collected. You have a lot of options. And just as a heads up, the delivery section does not appear for every type of page, just for the pages that have delivery as an option. So first, highlighted in red, you can generate a PDF and customize the look and feel exactly the way that you want it. This is great if you're doing in-person deliveries. And one quick note, petition pages don't automatically deliver to anybody unless you configure them to do so. So you can test and try things out without worrying about, sending a bunch of test messages. Now, on the delivery section, if you choose to email your targets, they will receive an email when someone signs your petition. And depending on the targets associated with the page, you might see fewer options on this screen. So for instance, if your page is only targeted to federal legislators, you'll only have the option to email in batches. If your page targets non-federal legislators like State House or State Senate, then you'll see other options like being able to email immediately or email immediately for a while before switching to batch updates. But keep in mind, even if you are targeting your page to a mix of federal and non-federal legislators, we only use batch delivery for federal legislators. So let's assume on this page, I'm targeting to some state legislators. Here I've chosen the recommended immediate then batch setting. And this is important. I'm not going to go super in depth as to why it's the recommended setting, but essentially you want your targets to actually read your petition signatures. And the recommended setting is a good balance between making sure they see them and not being spammy. Once I've made these selections, I need to configure my immediate delivery settings. And so here I've created a subject, and end subsidies for big oil. And then my email message, dear target name. I just signed a petition titled and subsidies for big oil. You can see that there's a bunch of personalization in here, and I'm about to get to that. Scrolling down a bit more, I get to my batch settings, which looks very similar. Batch delivery essentially says we're going to send your target a big list of all of the signatures rather than flooding their inbox, which could hurt your sender reputation. So I've configured my subject and mailing body, again with lots of personalization, and I said that my target can download a spreadsheet of all of the signatures. If your page targets the US House, you'll see a checkbox for communicating with Congress, which is the US House's preferred way of receiving petition signatures. The nice thing about communicating with Congress is that it goes through their officially supported system, so constituents will likely receive a response. The bad thing about communicating with Congress is that it requires things like a salutation like Mr. or Ms. and a full address. So if you use that system, your page will also need to collect that information in order to deliver those signatures. It's also only available for the House and not the Senate, though the Senate is working on building a similar system. Finally, let's click on View on Site to see what this page looks like. And so here we can see our petition, we've got our name, email address, zip code, and a comment. And if we did sign that petition, this is what the after action page looks like with our thank you text and our sharing options. So we just saw a petition page from creation to seeing it live and signing it. But before we move on to call pages, let's take a look at how to create a list of targets. So on the Pages tab, you would expand the Targets menu and choose from legislative targets or custom targets. So let's look at legislative targets first. If I were to click the blue plus sign at the top of the next page, I'd be sent to this screen where I can customize my legislative targets. And ActionKit has legislative data for US House, US Senate, and all 50 state House and state Senates. So let's say I just wanted to target a mailing to Maryland State House Republicans. So I'm going to give myself a nice descriptive name. Next, I'm going to choose State House as the type from the drop-down menu. Next, I want to limit it to Maryland, so I type in MD here, and notice the help text here that says enter 2-letter state abbreviations separated by commas. So we know to use MD. Then I check the box for target Republicans. You can narrow this even further by including or excluding specific legislators that you want to target. And at the bottom is a count of how many targets your choices would end up with. Here's another example. I've created a list of US House Green New Deal supporters, and I'm adding them one by one as more people come out in favor of the Green New Deal. Now you can get as complicated or as straightforward with this targeting as suits you. So if you know 5 squishy senators you need to make sure go your way, you can target them like this. Or if you want to make sure that you're calling all Democrats or all Republicans, you can do that too. And you don't have to limit yourself to targeting just legislators either. You could target other elected officials like city council members or governors. You could target media or corporate CEOs. So one example from a few years ago that many of our clients did was contacting the CEOs of streaming services and asking them to drop R. Kelly from their platforms. So I could create a custom target group for that. Now, the jurisdiction here depends on who you're targeting. If you're targeting city council members, the jurisdiction would be city. If you're targeting governors, the jurisdiction is state. If you're, since this is streaming service CEOs, it doesn't matter where our users live, I still want to be able to contact them. Oh, and in the chat, Mary says, I worked on that campaign. Awesome. So here, since I want everyone everywhere to be able to be able to take action on this page, I set my jurisdiction to all users. Optional fields let you send your members to tweet at or Facebook, your targets. If you have a lot of targets, you can also upload a spreadsheet of them here. So let's say I only have a few of these targets, so I'm just going to add them manually. Here I add in the names and contact information for my targets, the CEOs of Spotify and Pandora. Then I'll be able to use this targeting in a call page, sending my users to call them, asking them to mute R. Kelly. Now I think we're ready to look at call pages. So remember, you'll add your targets on the Action Basics screen of your page. And so here I've chosen streaming service CEOs, mute R. Kelly, just like we created. And then let's take a look at the Let's Call the US Senate About Fossil Fuels call page, because I want to show personalization, especially with the pages with targets snippets. So finally, I'm getting to personalization like I promised. Here I've written out my introduction text, but what's really interesting here is my script text. I wrote out, hello, my name is, and then I went to the snippets menu highlighted in red, and I chose user's first name, and it dropped that in right there. And then I clicked the snippet for city, and it drops in my city. And then I type in, I'm calling to ask, and then in the snippets menu, I scroll down to pages with targets, and then I'm going to choose Senator or Representative Smith, and it puts in contacts, targets, title last. So it'll put in Senator Representative Smith, to remove subsidies for oil companies that are wrecking our planet. Now, you have so many options for personalization here, and the best advice that I can give you is to create a test page and play around with all of the different personalization snippets that you can use. And really, that's great advice generally. Make a test page, make a test mailing, and play around with it. Try new things and see what happens. So I will show you these snippets again when we cover mailings in a little bit. So next up, I'm going to add how'd it go as the survey question text that gets asked for the call report. So after a call has been made, we ask, hey, how did your call go? Did they seem, open to muting our Kelly or not? Now, like on other types of pages, you can customize what appears on the thank you page after someone has taken action here. And so here I've written out, thank you for calling your representative. And down at the bottom of the edit content page for call pages, it's worth asking what information should we be asking of our users? Now, in this screenshot, I'm actually using a page that targets state legislators just because I wanted to highlight this. If you're targeting state legislators, you need more than just a zip code to know who someone's state legislators are. You need their full address. So this little red message will appear saying, hey, since you're targeting to state legislators, I need to require state address. So I'm going to put that in there. Let's go ahead and see what our call page would look like. Here we go. And then it looks kind of like a petition page, right? But when we enter our information and click submit, we come to a page that has a call script and it has our targets to call and it has a way to report how the call went. So everything that you need to make a phone call is on this page right here. Before we move on to mailings, I want to go back to the Pages tab one more time and look at the sidebar menu so that we can see a way to compare the performance of our pages. In the sidebar menu, go to Compare Pages. And on the following screen, you can enter one or more pages that you'd like to compare the performance of. You'll see the total number of actions, how much money was given, and by how many people. You'll see how many new members there were, how many clicks, and the conversion rate of the page. And this is just one of the many reports available to you. And later in the training, we're going to briefly cover the Reports tab where you'll be able to carve up data on actions in many different ways to help guide your decision-making processes. Next up is mailings. On screen here is the Mailings tab, where on the left, you can browse mailing drafts and recently sent mailings. And in this screenshot, I have two arrows pointing to the main ways that you would create a mailing. So if your organization has created mailing models, which they probably have, you'll probably want to use the Draft from Model button and choose the relevant mailing model. So here, my mailing model is called Replace Me TK subject line. Now, a mailing model is, and let me go back really quickly for that last slide. What is the difference between actions and clicks? So if you send a mailing, and we're going to get to this in a little bit, if you send a mailing, if someone clicks on the mailing, but they don't follow through and complete the action, like sign the petition, then you'll have a click, but not an action. So, but we'll get to that in mailings a little bit later. So here we have these mailing models. Think of it like a template that you can copy and work off of. So if you have boilerplate text or special targeting that you do with every type of mailing, you can set up your mailing model with that targeting or text, and every mailing that gets created from that model also gets that targeting. And many clients find that it saves lots of time once they're set up. Some clients have not created a mailing model, and that's totally fine. You'll use Create New Draft to create your new mailings. Once I've created a draft, I'm taken to the Compose mailing screen where I'll be able to configure all of the details of my mailing. First thing we'll do is set our subject line, and here I've made my subject line, "It's time for a Green New Deal." If you want to configure the preview text, you can do that here too. Preview text is what appears after the subject line before you've opened a mailing. And if you want to use the preview, if you want to leave the preview text blank, it'll use the mailing's body as the preview text. I want to call attention to the help text here because it's easy to overlook, but if you pay attention to it, it often has important hints, clarifications, or reminders of how things work. So here, the help text gives us a time-saving hint about multiple subject lines. Now, sure, if you want to use multiple subject lines with this mailing, you could click this blue plus sign for each subject line that you want and add them one by one. But there's a quicker way to add multiple subject lines. Let's say on staff we discuss which subject lines we're going to use in chat. Here I've highlighted all of the subject lines that we agreed on. So I'm going to highlight these, and then I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to paste them into the subject line box. ActionKit will automatically put each line of text into its own subject line. And this also works with preview text as well. Now, the way subject line testing works is ActionKit will split the emails that it sends about equally among all of the subject lines that you choose. So about 25% of recipients of this mailing will get the subject line, "It's time for a Green New Deal." Other 25% will get, "Did you see who came out in support of the Green New Deal?" The third 25% will get, "There's no Planet B," and the remainder will get, "Our planet is warming." Now that we've entered in our subject lines, you get to choose who is this email going to be from. Now you can choose from a selection of from lines here, or if you notice the blue plus sign, you can create one on the fly. Usually you'll leave the reply to blank, and that'll leave it as the same address as the from line, but if you need to customize it, you can do that here. Just like for pages, the notes field is only visible to you and your colleagues. So recipients of your mailing will not see it. It's just an internal field to help you and your colleagues know what this mailing was all about. You can also think of tags as categories for what a mailing is about. And your team has likely set up a specific way that they categorize pages and mailings, so go with that. Now, the wrapper controls the layout and the look and feel of the mailing. So just by changing the wrapper that we're using, we can entirely change the look and feel of the mailing. This is the same content, just a different wrapper. Now, your team will already have created a set of mailing wrappers, and generally you'll probably only use one or two and in different situations. So for instance, you might have one layout for general emails to your membership and a different layout for newsletters or fundraising. Now, the landing page is the page that you created in ActionKit that you want to link to from your mailing. So this is generally a petition page or a call page or a donation page or some other type of page, but usually it's your main call to action. So we'll talk a little bit more about customization in a few slides, but it works the same way as pages. And if your mailing is personalized to say, "Call Senator Warren" or "Call Senator Harris," you'll need to use a landing page here. And you'll need to make sure that that page has appropriate targets set up, just like we covered in the last section. If we scroll down a bit, we'll get to the mailing body where we'll write the main content of the email. So the greeting, the lead, the call to action, the meat of the mailing, everything goes here. And this is the visual view where you can see roughly what your mailing content looks like as you type it in. And if you click between visual and code, highlighted in red here, you can see what the HTML looks like behind the scenes. So you can switch back and forth between code and visual view as necessary to adjust your mailing depending on your preferences. And I do want to say that not every client has the visual editor enabled, because sometimes the visual editor can eat your code, and so every client has decided whether they want to use the visual editor at all. So if you don't see that as an option, that's why. But I'm going to go back to the visual editor since it's a lot easier to read. So next I'm going to click on the snippets menu. This works exactly like Pages. Now, a snippet is just the small piece of code that allows you to personalize your email message tailored to the individual recipient. So like, hello, Shannon, and the greeting of an email. With your snippets menu open, you can click the snippet that you want, and it gets placed at the position of your cursor in the mailing body. There are so many snippets available to you that we really don't have time to get into all of them, but I wanted to share a few just to get your gears turning. You can tell someone to call their senator by name and give their senator's phone number, including their local office numbers. There's every option to make your sentences with those targets grammatically correct, saying he or she or they as appropriate, or his or her or their as appropriate, pluralizing when appropriate, and so on. There's highest previous donation and a host of similar donation-based snippets that let you customize based on past giving. There's snippets to recruit your members to an event. You can do if-else trees. You can check on a user's custom fields. There's so much more that you could do. And we could spend a full hour just on snippets, but sadly we have to move on. So I'll leave you with this link for later, and we'll move on now. And don't worry, we are going to, you're going to get these slides, so you'll get this link and you don't have to frantically copy it down. And I'll also be sending you the recording for this presentation as well, so you'll get to see all of it and watch it again. And I didn't mean to click on the link, but it would take you to our documentation. Next up, the best way to see what a snippet would do is to view it in the preview. So if you remember, this is the snippet that we had for our name, our first name, and this user happens to be named Test. If we scroll down a bit, this is the preview pane. You may need to click on the word preview in order to expand the pane if it's not expanded. The preview automatically updates as you make changes to your mailing. So this looks pretty good to me. I can see how my mailing looks, make changes, come back to the preview till it looks exactly the way that I want it. And for the most part, the preview updates automatically, but if you've made some changes that aren't showing up, this update button will force the preview pane to refresh. There's also a switch that lets you see what your mailing will look like on a smaller screen. So if we clicked that now, we can see that the mailing is squished in a bit, looking a bit more like what it would look like on a phone. Now, this is pretty important since a large percentage of your members are opening their emails on their phones, so you want your mailing looking good at all sizes. Keep in mind that you can switch between desktop and mobile to get a sense of what your mailing will look like on each. You can also specify a user that you'd like to see a preview for. So this allows you to see what the mailing will look like for a specific user. So you can enter in someone's user ID if you know it, but in most cases, you'll probably want to enter their email address here and click Update to update the preview. This can be useful, especially when you're testing snippets to make sure that it looks exactly the way you want it. But just remember that getting a proof is the most reliable way to see exactly what an email is going to look like. And on that subject, let's talk about proofs. Previews are really helpful for making sure that your mailing looks good, but the true test comes in sending a proof mailing to yourself. A proof mailing is one of the actual emails that we will send to someone, except it's sent to you instead of to them. Once you're satisfied with your preview and you're happy with your mailing and you're ready to move on to your targeting, first send yourself a proof. Many clients will generate a proof and send it around to staff for final checks and edits, or even earlier as part of the draft stages. Let me switch over to my email real quick, and you can see here's my proof mailing. Now, if something looks wrong, especially with one of your snippets that creates the personalization, you can make your edits and get more proofs to make sure that everything looks good. On the target screen, we will get to choose who will receive this email. So we have a lot of options. Let's dig right in. If we click Add Criteria to this set, this brings a big drop-down menu with lots of options. So let's start off with lists. This is a pretty important one, so I wanted to call special attention to it. You're going to use this in pretty much every mailing that you send, with few exceptions. So here I'm going to include the main email list. You can get there from Add Criteria and then Lists. Your organization may have multiple email lists, including some that are supposed to not receive any mailings, but they're not necessarily unsubscribed. So follow the instructions that your team has set for this. But you'll want to include a list in your targeting, which is usually the main email list, or you'll get a warning on the next screen. You can also target by actions on a page. So here, if I chose actions from the drop-down menu, I could target to people who have taken action on one or more pages. And highlighted in red here shows that some of the targeting categories have hints if you hover over them. So if I hover over actions, this says targets users who have taken action on the pages that I choose. So here I've chosen a page, we need to invest in solar jobs. And anyone who has taken action on that page will receive this mailing. Here, in this example, I've chosen 2 pages, invest in solar jobs and end big oil subsidies. This will give me anyone who has taken action on either page or action on both pages. Now let's say I wanted to target by events. If I set up an event campaign for congressional town halls for the Green New Deal, and I wanted anyone who lives within 10 miles of an event to be able to attend, here's how I'd do it. I have my event campaign, congressional town halls, Green New Deal. I have my campaign radius for 10 miles. And I also have some checkboxes to make sure that I'm not sending someone who lives on the border of 2 states to an event in the wrong state, or to an event in the wrong congressional district. So you have same county, same state, same district. You can also make sure that you only target people in the same county. You can target by event date and event field as well. So you have so many options. You can also target by donors. So anyone who's ever donated, or just active recurring donors, or anyone who's ever given a recurring donation, people whose cards are about to expire or have expired, and so on. So you can also target recipients of a past mailing. So this is really helpful if, let's say, a link was bad and you need to send out a corrected link. You can choose the mailing that you want to target by and then send out a corrected link. You can also target by tag. So a few slides ago, we targeted by who is taking action on a set of pages. And that's fine if you have a few specific pages in mind. But if your organization is really good about tagging pages, you can instead target by tag. So as a reminder, think about tags as broad categories of what is this page or mailing all about. So here, I want to target anyone who's taken action on a page tagged with climate change. This is another reason to go back and tag all of your pages that have a lot of actions taken, because it'll make targeting by category much easier. There are a lot of options for targeting by location. So you have city or zip code radius, congressional district, state house, Senate, and states. Those are the most common ways. But heads up that if you're targeting by state house or state senate, you'll usually need someone's full address in order to know which one they're in. You can also target by report, and this is a little bit more advanced, but I wanted to show it anyways. The query library option allows you to target by a query report that you've previously written. So let's say I've created a report called Many Recent Actions. And again, later in the training, we're going to go through how to create a report. Let's say I've made one before called Many Recent Actions, and this is going to give me a list of users who have taken several actions in the last 90 days. These are my most active users, so I want to send them this mailing, and I can target them here. And just like a few slides ago, when I had target anyone who has taken action on either of these pages or both, if you target to multiple query reports from the query library, that's like saying target anyone who meets the criteria of either of these reports. For limits and ordering, you can limit the number of recipients. So for example, if you have 50,000 people who match your targeting, but you only want to send to 10,000 of them right now, you would enter 10,000 here. And this is often used for testing a mailing before going for a full list send, or if you wanted to stagger calls so not everyone gets a busy signal. Next up, we're going to review our mailing on the proof and send screen. Once you've finished, this is your chance to review your mailing, make sure it looks good, you've gotten all of the details correct before you send, and this is where I can review the subject lines that I've chosen, see my from line, see my internal notes, my wrapper, which controls the layout, my landing page, and the tags associated with the mailing. You can change the notes and the tags later on if you like, but everything else cannot be changed once the mailing has been sent. And if you scroll down, you get a chance to review who is going to receive this mailing. So right now, this shows that my targeting is going to send to 30 people. And you can take a close look at your includes and your excludes to make sure that this looks right and aligns with what you expect your targeting count to be. Some clients have customized a pre-send dashboard that will give you a checklist or a set of reminders before you send your mailing. And here I've customized my dashboard to remind me of all of the steps that I need to make sure that I've done before a mailing is ready to go out. Everything from clicking all the links to make sure that none are dead, taking action on the page to make sure that everything actually flows correctly, making sure everything looks good on mobile, and so on. You've also got the option to send proofs from the screen too, which is helpful for double checking that everything looks good with your mailing. And if you have access to be able to send mailings, you'll see a few options at the very bottom of this page. So send, which sends the mailing. There's schedule for later, which lets you schedule the mailing for a later time. So you can schedule for whichever time you like. You can also schedule for, I want to send at 9 a.m. in the recipient's time zone. You can also make a mailing recurring, which is especially helpful for sending mailings like a welcome series or getting donors that have an expiring credit card to renew. And if I check my email, here's what it looks like. Now, I want to talk really briefly about user recognition. When you send a mailing to someone, ActionKit is going to put a unique identifier called the ActionKit ID or AKID into the link so that the recipient doesn't have to enter their information every time. In the mailing that I sent out inviting people to sign up for a webinar, there was a link to the page. When you clicked it, probably recognized you. And let's say I received the mailing myself. I clicked the link to RSVP, and highlighted in red here, it says, not Shannon Turner. Well, click here. But that is me, so I can just click sign up. But if you had this email forwarded to you by a coworker, then you probably had to click, no, I'm not Shannon. And then you click here. And when you did that, the user recognition will disappear and you get to enter in your own name and email address here. But behind the scenes, ActionKit knows that your colleague referred you to this page. Or maybe your colleague forwarded you the email, but it never showed you, hey, are you not Shannon? Click here. And you might be wondering, why not? Now, if your colleague has already taken action on that page, ActionKit assumes that they forwarded it onto you and it won't fill their details in the form. So sometimes it can be helpful to see this broken down point by point. By default, ActionKit will recognize your users. And that's great because it means, better action rates, there's less to type in, and your users are probably expecting to be recognized. After all, if you know their name in the email that you sent, shouldn't you know their name in the link that they clicked in that email? But chances are, if they're going to forward the email to a friend, they've already clicked through and taken action themselves. So if I receive an email and I don't take action on the page, but I forward it to Tanya and Tanya clicks, then the action page is going to say, not Shannon, click here. User recognition is a great feature. So in this example, clicking the Call the US Senate email sends me straight to the call script page. And since call pages are a higher bar ask, user recognition is especially important here. So enough about user recognition, let's talk performance. After your mailing has been out in the world for a little bit, people are gonna open it, read it, click it, and take action. And you'll wanna know, how well is my mailing doing? So from the Mailings tab, if you click Sent up top, you can find your mailing and then click View to see the performance. In this screenshot, I'm looking at the email I sent in 2019, inviting action kitties like you to join a similar webinar. Here we can see how many recipients there were, how many people opened, how many people clicked, and how many took action. Earlier, the question was, what is a click and what is taking action? And so opening is when you open the email. And one thing I want to note about opens is that some email clients, like Outlook, for instance, that hide images, like, you ever seen the little bar up top of your email in Outlook that says, to protect your privacy, Outlook has blocked images. And then it says, here's this little button if you want to enable images. That's actually what's going on here. The way that we know that someone has opened up an email is if that image gets loaded. So if that image gets loaded, then we have this open. It gets registered as an open. So this is a little bit of an undercount because we don't know how many people didn't allow images to be shown in Outlook. Most other email clients, though, they show images by default, and so they are reflected here. The clicks is when someone has clicked on a link in your email, and then an action is, has someone clicked through to an ActionKit page and then signed that petition. So, or in this case, signed up for this webinar. So this next table here We can see that it got a lot of forwards, which doesn't surprise me since it's a webinar training. Lots of people forwarding it to you saying, hey, you should really take this. We get a lot of new users as well. So probably quite a few people had this email forwarded to them by a coworker. If we scroll down a little bit, we can see the unsubscribes, complaints, bounces for our mailing. And since this is a mailing to ActionKit clients, I'm not surprised that 0 people unsubscribed or marked this as spam. But we can also see how many clicks each link in our mailing received. I only had 1 link in this mailing, but it had 25 clicks, about a 10% click rate to the RSVP page. I do want to highlight one thing that I've seen confuse a lot of folks before we move on, and how you can avoid it. So before you use page target snippets, you need a landing page. But you'll probably encounter this error from time to time when you're customizing your email with things like a page target's name. So what's going on here? The error message says, save your targeting or specify a user to preview. What's actually going on is something that we need to fix on the targeting screen. We can't fix it on the compose screen. If you use targeting snippets like Senator or Representative Smith before you've gone ahead and saved your targeting, you'll see this error. And the way that you fix it is on the targeting screen, there's this special criteria, landing page targets. What we're doing is we're saying to ActionKit, I want the people who are constituents of my landing page's targets to receive this mailing. So if my landing page targets are House Republicans, only people whose representative is a Republican will receive this mailing. Generally, if you're using targeting with the landing page, this checkbox is usually what you want, though you may want to add some other criteria to filter it further. Deep breath. We've covered pages and mailings, and now we are going to cover users, specifically how to find users and view their action, mailing, and donation history. From the Users tab, you can search using the search box up top, which will let you search users by name, email, zip code, or ID. And I want to note that if you use this same search box from a different tab, like pages or mailings, it's going to search for different things. So for instance, if you're on the pages tab, it searches pages. If you're on the mailings tab, it searches mailings. So keep that in mind when you're using this search box, and pay special attention to the help text here. Now let's explore a few more options for finding the users that you're looking for. If you expand the search queries button, there are queries that you can use to search your users, like users with active recurring orders highlighted in red here. You might also have other search options available to you. Finally, there's the advanced search, which will let you search for users who match your criteria. So let's take a closer look at this advanced search. If you're just searching by email or name, you could probably just use the regular search box that we showed a few slides ago rather than the advanced search. But if you need to narrow your search in a bit more, the advanced search can be really helpful. Here's what it looks like. You can search by number of actions, actions taken on a page, money given, location, and so much more. If you're familiar with the Reports tab, which we'll be getting to next, or if you've worked with the Query Builder, this screen is going to look pretty familiar. But here, I'm searching for anyone who lives in California and has donated a total of at least $250. I can also continue to refine my search even more. And here's what the search results looks like. Probably looks just like the Pages tab or the Mailings tab, except we're searching for users instead of pages or mailings. So we can click their name or the edit button to see more details. Once you've found the user that you want to view, clicking Edit will take you to their overview page where you can see a summary of information about that person. Things like their name, email, subscription status, actions they've taken, and so much more. As we scroll down in the user summary, we can see more details like their sharing history. So how many times did they share a page on Twitter or Facebook? We can also see a summary of their donation history. For clients who have our Salesforce sync enabled, if this user has a record in Salesforce, you'll be able to see that too, including a link that goes directly to their Salesforce contact page. So if I clicked here, this would take me to Shannon's Salesforce page. Scrolling down even more, you can see their address as well as their representatives. So here, this user lives in Maryland's 8th district. And if you clicked on address, it expands into multiple text boxes so you can make adjustments or corrections as necessary. And if you change a person's address, we will automatically determine who their representative is and adjust that accordingly. Scrolling down a bit more, you can see phone numbers and custom user fields. So here, this user has 2 custom fields that I think give a good picture of some of the things that custom user fields are commonly used for: my occupation and my employer. But I've seen clients do really creative things with these custom user fields. And if you want to view them or set them, this is where you'll find them. So let's move on. If you scrolled all the way up to the top and look for actions next to overview, that's where we're going next, to the action history page. This is where you'll see a summary of all of the actions a user has taken since they joined your list, along with an explanation of which pages they took action on, what types of pages they were, and so on. So here we can see that I made a donation in April 2020, and I completed a survey in July 2019, and I signed a petition in June 2019. You can also see that I've expanded the middle action so I can see more details, including the specific answers that I gave to survey questions. You can see my action ID that's associated with this specific action, and the source. How did I come to find this page and make that action? Next up, if we go to the mailing history, you can see which mailings you've sent them before, but also which ones they have opened, clicked, and taken action from. Just like with action history, you can click each entry in order to expand it and see more details. So if you were to click the mailings here, you'd get to see not only did I click on a link in the mailing, but you'd be able to see specifically which link did I click on. If you click donations up top, go to the donation history, where you can see a summary of all of the donations I've made. So my number of one-time donations, my number of monthlies, my totals, the amount of money I've given, the average, the highest, the second highest. So let's take a closer look at the donation history table. And this is where you could see the exact details of when the donations were made, what type they were, so a one-time or a recurring donation, what was the status of the donation, and the amount. This is also where you could reverse the payment, which is highlighted in red here, if they ask for a refund. If you need to reverse the payment, I want to emphasize that you should reverse the payment in ActionKit by clicking this button rather than in your merchant account directly. Same goes for if you need to update your donor's address. You should do that in ActionKit on the overview screen. As with actions and mailings, you can click on a donation row to see more details about the donation. So let's expand this one and look more closely at it. Now that this is expanded, we can see the payment processor. So we have Braintree. We can see the payment method, credit card, the transaction ID, the action ID, which page this donation was made on, and the source of the donation. Every now and then you might get a donor asking you to resend their donation receipt because they didn't receive one or maybe they lost it. And we've added in a new feature kind of recently that allows you to do just that. Essentially, how it works is when the original confirmation mailing is sent to your donor, we save an exact copy of that mailing. This feature was added in early 2019, so it's only available for donations since then. So this resend confirmation mailing link will only appear if you can actually resend it. For old donations or donations where you can't resend the mailing, you won't see this link. So in case you see the link for some donations and not others, that's why. That was users, and our final section today is reports. Reports are going to measure how well your pages and your mailings have performed. So things like how many actions people have taken on a petition page, how many donations someone has made, how many donations came in on a specific page, what's the open and click and action rate of a mailing, and so on. So let's click Browse All, which is highlighted in red here, and we'll be able to see what reports we have available. On the Browse Reports screen, we can see reports that we can run, and we can search, and we can filter as well. On the right-hand side, if we filtered by WAWD standard, these are built-in ActionKit reports. And there are a large number of reports that I think are pretty useful, and we've created them for you, and they come standard with ActionKit. You can also create new reports yourself, and your team has likely created tons of useful reports already. But I wanted to highlight that we have nearly 300 reports come standard with ActionKit. So you may want to go ahead and filter by WAWD standard, browse the reports on offer here because you might find one that does exactly what you're trying to do, or you might find one that you can copy and remix to meet your needs. So let's go back to the Reports tab and take a look at some more built-in reports. Highlighted here are 3 reports that are really useful. So let's take a closer look at each of these. We're going to start with Download Actions, move on to Compare Mailings, and then Compare Pages. Download Actions lets you download a spreadsheet full of data about your actions on a specific page. Lots of clients use this to download survey responses. And you have lots of ways to customize the spreadsheet that you get as a result. So you can include the action taker's name and address, district, phone, email. You can limit it to a specific date range. You can include custom fields if you like. Lots of choices. Next, let's take a look at what Compare Mailings looks like. Here, we'll be able to search for 2 or more similar mailings that we want to compare to one another. So I've gone ahead and searched for 2 different emails that have similar content, but different subject lines and different levels of urgency to see which performed better. So ActionKit Training Day Survey, response needed. A lot of urgency there, seems pretty scary. Oh, I need to respond to that. Or just ClientCon Training Day, a little bit more chill. Let's click Compare and see what happens. Up top, we can see a top-line analysis of opens, clicks, and action rates with error bars broken out by each mailing. And here we can see that mailing 5153 had a higher click rate, even though opens were the same. Scrolling down a bit, we can see the raw numbers of opens and clicks and actions per mailing, and we can also select a winner as well. So here we can see that not only did mailing 5153 have better click-through rates, it also had higher action rates. So it seems like I really want this one, 5153 ClientCon Training Day, the more chill version. If you select select under Select Winner, it'll create a copy of the mailing with the same targeting as the original, but with the limit removed. But I should mention that it does not send without you clicking send. So don't be afraid to click this button to pick a winner. Toward the bottom of the Compare Mailings report, you can see how many opens and forwards and new users each mailing got. So here we can see that mailing 5153 overall seemed to perform better with better actions and clicks and opens, clicks, and actions, but 5154 had more forwards and more new users. So if these were the things that I'd care about, then maybe I actually want to send 5154. Now, the third built-in report that I wanted to highlight is the Compare Pages report, which we've actually already seen. Lets you see a comparison of how many actions, donations, money, users, new members, clicks, and conversions you got per page. This is exactly the same as on the Pages tab. Functionality is identical, but it's so commonly used that we put it in both places. So these are the three built-in main reports, and I'm also going to share some more built-in reports that come standard with ActionKit towards the end. But for now, let's create a new report. We're going to go back to the Reports tab and click New Query, which will let us create a new report of the type that we want. And we have so many options to choose from based on the types of information that we want to include in our report. Most of the categories have at least some overlap with the others. So for example, writing a user's report will also have some information about the donation those users have made and the actions those users have taken. For example, you can often find information about page performance using either the page query type or the action query type. So you'll often be able to get information from more than one of these query types. So this is the big hint I want to say, is you can switch between these different query types until you've saved this query. So if you can't figure out how to make this custom report work with one of these query types, try a different type until you find exactly what you're looking for. And there are some times that specific types are going to work best. So the user query type is really best for specific user contact data or specific custom fields on a user. Action query type is best for actions on a page. Donations is really best for fundraising on an aggregate level as compared to the specific donations that a user made. The page is how well did my page perform. Mailings are great for how well did my mailing perform. But the best advice that I can give you, and again, I think this really applies overall as well, look at existing reports, or for that matter, existing pages, existing mailings, and make a copy and tinker with them to make them better, remix them to see, how can you change this to meet your needs? Because most of learning this, system, whether it's ActionKit or really anything else, is just practicing, seeing what options are available and not being afraid to make a mistake. If you make a test mailing and target it just to yourself, then you don't have to worry about what happens. So let's actually get into creating the report. The first thing that you're going to want to know once you've chosen your query type are the display columns and the filter criteria. Display columns allow you to choose which data are going to appear in your report. So in other words, if you are creating a spreadsheet, what columns would you want to have in that spreadsheet? Filter criteria allow you to narrow down precisely which fields match your criteria to include in your report. So in other words, if you have no filter criteria, you want every record. And as you add filter criteria, you can narrow down just to the data that you want. So let's add in some display columns and filter criteria. Here we can see some of the choices that are available to users for the user's query type. Keep in mind that each query type has a different set of columns available, though there's often a lot of overlap between the categories. So here you can see user's name, email address, the home address, which district they're in, phone numbers, so on. Now, there's so much information to sift through in these drop-down menus. Like, this is actually a menu that scrolls down. It's not just what you see here. So you can also type to search for just the columns that you want. And I think this is really helpful. I use it all the time. So I want my first column to be the US legislative district. So I'm going to search district, and you can see that it narrows the results down. In this example, I've added 2 display columns. I have one for the US legislative district, and I have one for the total number of users, which will then be grouped by that US legislative district. So when I run my report, my results are going to have 2 columns: which district there are, and which district I have, and the number of users in that district. But you might be wondering, how many rows will it have? And that depends on my filter criteria. Here in this example, I've limited my results to only show me users that have taken action on a page that is tagged with green new deal. And if I press run down at the bottom, I can run this report that I've made. So taken all together, this lets me see who has taken action on a Green New Deal page for all US legislative districts. You might be wondering, what's with this blank district? And that's where I don't know which US district they're in. And so I have about 1,500 of those users. Now, every little button and drop down in here is something that you can customize in your report. And if you were to click where it says unsorted, it's going to change to ascending. And if you click that again, it's going to change to descending. So this is how you can sort your results. And if you press run again, you'll get your new set of results. This time is sorted by the districts who have taken that had the most users who took action. So here I had the most users taking action in West Virginia's 3rd district. So like I mentioned earlier, there's a ton of built-in reports, but here are a few of my favorites. The page drill down dashboard is going to give you detailed stats for a given page. The call page dashboard has call actions that are broken out by your targets. The action rates gives you monthly stats and charts that are related to action rates. So it's like a monthly overview. And we have covered so much ground in a very short amount of time. So just as a reminder, I'm going to send out the recording to folks probably on Monday. And you'll also get a copy of these slides. And I know that we went through things really fast. We're almost coming up on our 90 minutes, but we really only scratched the surface. And I would love to run more trainings like this in the future. So if there's a specific thing that you would like to see, let us know. But there are so many different things that you can check out. We have our documentation. So here at this link, where you can go through and see all of the different, in-depth guides on how to use every feature in ActionKit. There's tutorials with lots of very specific how-to guides on, I want to set up a welcome series. How do I do that? We also have lots of step-by-step guides on our blog, so blog.actionkit.com, and that gives you lots of practical how-to advice on things like, how do I set up a custom page field? Things like that. So I wanted to thank you all so much for taking the time today. Thanks so much for being here.